Finish my breakfast while I turn things over to our current chair of the board. This is one of her last official events that she's going to do, and she's done a great job all year, so please give her a rousing round of welcome, Ms. Suzette Kovalt.
Good morning. Good morning. Again, my name is Suzette Kovalt. I am the current chair of the Carroll County Chamber Board, and I am the commercial banking officer with Farmers and Merchants Bank. And I would like to welcome everyone today. And Happy New Year. Happy New Year. And today, also I would like to say that this is our 95th year of the Carroll County Chamber of Commerce. At this time, I would like to ask everyone to please turn your cell phones to silent or off. And I would like to take this time to thank the Community Media Center as they are filming this event for us today. Thank you. Welcome to the Chamber's Legislative Kickoff Breakfast. The Carroll County Chamber of Commerce has approximately 600 business members, and we've been building relationships since 1924. We've been building relationships drive business, and today we shine a spotlight on another type of relationship we seek to strengthen and grow. The relationship between our business community and our elected officials who are part of the Carroll County Delegation to the Maryland General Assembly in Annapolis. The Maryland General Assembly meets this year from January 9th to April 8th to act on more than 2,500 bills, including the state's budget. The Legislative Committee of the Chamber has a long-time tradition of reviewing proposed legislation and taking a pro-business stand in writing letters to a delegation and to the chair of the various Senate and House committees in Annapolis. They review our letters, and your voice is heard by them through the Chamber. This is one of the biggest and most little-known benefits that the Chamber provides to our members and to the entire local business community. Last year, we wrote over 100 letters advocating for business interests in Carroll County and the state of Maryland. Of the letters we wrote last year, 53% of them were decided according to our pro-business positions. If you are a member of our legislative committee, please stand and be recognized. If you would like to participate in this official important chamber committee this year, please see Mike McMullen. We start meetings weekly on Mondays, January 21st through the end of March. We'll now hear from our sponsors, BG&E and Comcast. Then we'll return to the program. Then we'll turn the program over to Dana Blum, chair of our legislative committee. Dana will act as our moderator during the presentation today. BG&E is a longtime friend of the chamber, and representing them today is Megan Eves, who will not be speaking for them. I think she'll have to leave. But we are very happy and very proud that they are a sponsor of the Carroll County Chamber on many events, and we thank them very much for sponsoring. Thank you. Our next sponsor is Comcast, and Timothy Hughes will be speaking on behalf of them. Timothy.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming out. So we've been a sponsor of this event. Mike and I were talking, I think, for the past 7 or 8 years, and this has always been one of the events that we look forward to every year, and we're very proud to be a part of. You know, it's events like these where you bring our local business leaders together with our elected officials. They really are special events. You know, I've worked for Comcast and another big telecom company for most of my career throughout the state of Maryland, and really what's going on here in Carroll County really is pretty special, at least from my perspective, in terms of the relationship between the local business community and our elected officials. So thank you to all the elected officials for coming out this morning. Please ask some good questions, and hopefully, you know, there'll be a good dialogue here today. Just a little bit about Comcast. I think everybody's aware of our business generally, particularly on the consumer side when it comes to our residential internet and television service. But, you kind of read things in the trades every day, and our business is changing quite a bit. And specifically, the part of the business that Sharon Detrani, who's with me today, and I work for, is Comcast Spotlight. We're a subsidiary of Comcast. We're owned by Comcast. We're part of Comcast Advertising Group. And really what our role is, we're really more of an ad tech company that's owned by Comcast that competes with Google, competes with Facebook, as well as many local and kind of regional advertising companies. And really what we endeavor to do is to help businesses inside of the local community here in Carroll County and the surrounding jurisdictions to really connect with their clients through the use of video. So, the way the world's changing now, people think of Comcast, they think of television, right? They think of the thing hanging on the wall. But really, the way our business is morphed today is everybody in this room has a television in their pocket. Hopefully they're on silent. Hopefully they took your instructions and they're on silent. But everybody's carrying a television around with them every day. So if you just think about in your life and how you interact with video and how maybe you catch up with your news or catch up with your sports highlights and things like that, whenever you happen to see a 30-second or 15-second ad intrude into your world, if it ever smells or feels somewhat local or regional to Baltimore or Carroll County, that probably came through our company and through our office. So anyway, thank you guys for coming out this morning, and let's have a good morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Timothy. We've been very fortunate to have had Bill Gavin as our chairman of the Legislative Committee for almost 40 years. We're also very fortunate to have Dana Blum filling this role now, as she has served as our Legislative Committee for 10 years. Dana Blum, a certified senior human resource professional, is the immediate past president and current government affairs director of the Carroll County chapter. Lost my place. Sorry. Sorry. Society for Human Resource Management. She also served previous terms as president and government affairs director. Dana has more than 25 years' experience as an HR professional across a broad range of industries, including engineering, manufacturing, nonprofit, and television. Dana has served on the Chamber's Legislative Affairs Committee for 10 years. Please join me in welcoming our moderator, Ms. Dana Blum.
Thank you very much. Could I ask Delegates Krebs and Kettleman and Senator Reedy to come up to their spots here? That'd be great. And I just did want to say that I very much appreciate Mike and Bill's confidence in asking me to take over the chair of the committee this year. While none of us could ever replace Bill Gavin, I'm going to do my best to follow in his footsteps. So. Thank you. So we will start, and I will ask our delegation to limit their comments to approximately 5 minutes or less initially, and that will leave us all time for some questions and answers. So what we would like to hear from you is what you think are going to be the highlights of this session, what are going to be the hot issues that will be pushed for. And so let's start with Delegate Krebs, please.
We're just quickly trying to figure out who's going to talk about what. First, I say this every year, but this is like our kickoff going back next week to session, and it's such a wonderful group, and it really inspires us, because when we get down there, it's a little different, and even this year it's going to be way different. And I want to thank each and every one of you, because I know most of you, and the talent and the community that we have here in Carroll County is just phenomenal, and we really appreciate it. It gives us a great motive and a great backbone when we go down there. So keep in mind, we always say keep the lines of communication open, because all the things that we do impact you in some way or another, and we don't always know what that impact is unless you tell us. I'll give you an example quickly. We passed the sick leave bill over our objections last year and the governor's veto. It got overridden. But just having different people's perspective of how it affects your business. The hospital, we had a meeting with them before Christmas, and they told us how it affects the hospital. How it affects the emergency room, how it affects people on a holiday when they all call in sick and you still have to take care of people. And having that real live information for us to go back with, armed with that information, this is how it affects this group of people, is very helpful. So please communicate with us. You have our phone numbers, you know how to get in contact with us. You see us in the grocery store, so please keep that line of communication. And thank you to the Legislative Committee. I thank them every year, the value that you give to us in explaining these bills, taking a position. Very few counties do that, and the committee chairs read these things. We read it, so it is I know it takes a lot of time and energy. So all of you who have not volunteered to sign up for the Legislative Committee, help them out for your industry and let them know how things affect your industry. I think we're here to find out what's going to happen in the session this year, and I'm going to try to sum it up pretty quick. This was a year that was very disappointing to us, very disappointing. We have a governor who we love, who we think has done a very good job. He's very, very popular, 70% approval rating. We had some really good candidates that ran for office throughout this state of Maryland. And we came up short. And I say we, the balance in thought. And I keep talking about that. It's not about Republicans and Democrats, but it's about a balance in thought. And in Maryland, we don't have that. We've had a Democratic supermajority in the House of Delegates since 1922. We've had a majority in the Senate since 1900. Now, that's a long time. And it's about a balance of ideas and about how we get things accomplished. And won't get into all of that, but that balance has sort of been thrown, it was sort of getting some equilibrium, and it's sort of been thrown out of equilibrium. And we've got 60 new members in the legislature, so we're going to have a lot of new faces here, a lot of people that need to get up to speed on issues. And it takes a while to learn the issues. There's so many of them, so we have a lot of new freshmen. There are a number of people that actually beat their senators in some of the more progressive areas. So a delegate beat their senators, are now going over into the Senate, and they're more progressive, they're more liberal. So we're going to see, I think, a lot of things coming forward that we haven't had in the past. The other thing that was a record for this year is women in the legislature. And the top women we had was 62 in the past. That was a record. We used to have the most in the country. We dropped down a little bit a few years ago, and we're up to 70 now. That's a good thing, I think. Brings a different perspective. However, the thing I'm disappointed in, we have 63 Democrat women and 9 Republican women, and that's not good. I mean, we have people with different philosophies that need to be balanced out in that category. So that's something I think needs to change. So we're going to have a lot of issues that come from I think the women's group. Just think it's falling over. There we go. One of the big issues that came up last year in our Women Legislative Caucus is the new Me Too movement, and that's something you all in your businesses should start thinking about, because it's really become a big issue about workplace harassment. Some of it is justified and some of it is touchy. It's not, and so we have to find the balance in your industry. And I know Delegate Kittleman is going to be our Women's Caucus chair next year in 2020. We're very proud of that she's going to take that lead in the Women's Caucus. So that's a big change, having a record number of women in the legislature. Yesterday, I was down at MACO, which is the Maryland Association of Counties, and I was with 4 of our 5 commissioners. That's why none of them are here, because they're all down there, 2 of them learning new things and new member orientation. And it's very interesting to see the things that we do to the counties. I say we do. We pass legislation, and then how does it impact our counties? And I always like to go and see how these laws that we pass affect things. And the big thing yesterday I went to was the Kerwin Commission. We got our school board members here. Thank you for coming, all of you. And we work very well with our school board, with our commissioners. But the Kerwin Commission has been, well, let's go back. In 2002, they passed something called Thornton, and it was a funding formula update, huge influx of money into the counties, and then it was supposed to be revisited 10 years later. 10 years went by. They never really appointed a committee under O'Malley, but Governor Hogan appointed a committee a couple of years ago. They've been meeting for, I think, 26 months. Is that right? Long time. And they started off looking at policy about student achievement, which is good. Focus on other countries, what they're doing well, and try to emulate some of those things, because we haven't seen a lot of increase in student achievement throughout the state in those years with all that new influx of money. And I'm going to, present company excluded, we do a phenomenal job in our county. I'm very proud of that. But that's not necessarily duplicated throughout the state of Maryland. And for all the money we spend on education, we need accountability. We still have kids who are passing and graduating from high school that cannot read. And to me, that is a crisis. That is a civil right that you should be able to read. And to graduate someone that cannot read on a second or third grade reading level, it is wrong. So putting the accountability measures in place and some other things that Kerwin's looking at is a really good thing. But the one thing they haven't tackled yet after 26 months is how to pay for it and what the funding formulas will be. But I'll just give you something very quick, brief point that came out yesterday. They want us to pass the policy this year, that we want to have all-day pre-K and we want to have career and tech and P-Tech, which are all good things. They want the policy to pass, and then next year we're going to figure out how to pay for it and how the formula is going to be divvied up. And that reminds me of something we did with healthcare a few years ago. Doesn't work, folks. So the people in that room, the county people, I thought they were going to, by the time you left the room, their blood pressure was up to here. They were going crazy because the one thing they came out of that they want to do is they want to have a starting teacher's salary at $60,000 a year. Now, what's our starting seat now, 45? 44. So what are you going to do with those people now between 44 and 60? Well, they're going to give them a 10% raise over 3 years and just hope they don't mind that the new people coming in are making $60,000 a year. So everyone's sitting there saying, how's this going to work? So they have a long way to go. They're going to get back to the funding formulas, and I was very disappointed in what I heard yesterday. And there's a temporary report that's come out, preliminary report, has some good stuff in it. But the bottom line, they were supposed to talk about fixing the formulas, and that has not been really looked at yet. So that's a huge disappointment, and after hearing directly from two of the people on that committee, I was really shocked at what was coming out. Couple of the other issues that I believe are coming up, Justin may want to talk about this too. Redistricting is a big deal. We know that in this county, there's two parts of redistricting. You have congressional redistricting and you have legislative redistricting. On the congressional side, we all know about the gerrymandering of the 6th district and what a mess it is. Right now, just to go quickly through this, there's a court case that we just got overturned by the federal court, and they basically sent it back to the legislature and said, fix this. We have until March the 7th to come up with a fix. The governor has appointed a committee to come up with a fix, and that it won't just fix that one district, it will probably have to fix other districts as well. And if the legislature does not approve that, by March the 7th, the courts will come in and put their own map in place. Now, I believe that if the governor comes up with a good map, that the the courts might say, okay, governor, you have a good map and your legislature didn't approve it, so maybe they'll take that. But we will have some kind of a fix for congressional redistricting by March 7th, and then legislative redistricting will come after the 2020 census, so for the next election. And as you can see, the way that the stuff's been gerrymandered for the legislature, it's a challenge. We have an 11-member delegation. 11 members represent Carroll County. There are 3 of us here for different reasons, but part of it is because we have 4 members from Frederick County that live an hour away. They represent 2 precincts. We have 3 members from Howard County. We thank Delegate Kittleman for coming. It's a challenge to represent two counties and very small parts of it, and it sort of dilutes what we do. So we're going to try to get that fixed as well. Governor Hogan is committed to that, and I think we'll see some changes. But elections do have consequences, and it's going to be an interesting ride. A couple of things that I'm going to be working on and I talk about every year. The budget always obviously is a big deal. This year we're going to have a lot of new money in the budget. Even though things might look bad with the stock market, we've had a lot of capital gains coming in, so we've had a budget write-ups, which is a good thing. We have a big surplus. The counties are going to have a surplus of money as well, and that's because we did not fix the unintended consequences of the federal tax changes on state taxes. And simply that means that, the federal government, we're going to get $3.2 billion more in our pocketbooks in Marylanders, but the state did not fix our tax code, and then there's going to be people who used to itemize deductions that can't do that anymore, and you're going to be paying more in state taxes. We tried to get that fixed last year. Governor tried to fix it. I tried to fix it. Our whole caucus, everyone was trying to get this fix in, but there is this unintended consequence. We're going to have new state tax revenue coming in, and you will notice it when you get your taxes done in April, and you'll say, why are my state taxes higher? If you itemized your deductions. So won't get into the rest of that. So there is a surplus. We do have a good balance in our rainy day fund. We did pass the lockbox for the casino revenues this year, so there'll be about $300 million more in there. So those are all issues that will be coming up during this session. So if you have any other questions, ask us.
Thank you.
Senator Reedy?
Good morning, everybody. Hope you had a very Merry Christmas and great holiday season. It's great to see such a full room full of people. We're excited to get a chance to see, as Susan said, we know many of you we've met, but of course we always get to make some new friends when we come to this event, and it's always a great event. We appreciate you putting it on. Quick shout out to the Legislative Committee. Those letters are really helpful. I mean, some issues like paid sick leave, we obviously were pretty clear on what we believed about it, but also what the business community would think about it. But there's more what I would call obscure bills that people often will send me a bill number and say, what do you think about SB 841? And I'll say, what's SB 841? You don't know? I said, well, you see, 841, there's about 1,500 bills that get put in the Senate side and about 1,200 in the Senate, about 2,000 in the House. So sometimes it helps to flag something for us, and we can go, oh, that's coming down the pike. Maybe it's not coming to my committee, but it's going to another committee. So it's very helpful to get those letters and be able to, us and even our staffs, to be able to see what's going on and monitor them. I wanted to give the regrets for Delegate Rose and I were talking yesterday about this event, and then she this morning is very sick this morning, not feeling well, so she was going to be here. And Delegate Shoemaker is speaking to a competing event this morning. We're going to have to. Mike McMullen is going to go break some kneecaps after this event to try to avoid there being competition in the future. But
Absolutely.
He's in Carroll County and he's talking about business issues, but agribusiness. So anyway, somebody yesterday that I follow on Twitter, and Twitter can be a little bit of a dangerous place, but I follow on Twitter that's on the other side of the aisle. I think he's a lobbyist or an advocate on the other side of the perspective. And he tweeted about how many minutes there were till session begins. And I tweeted that back out and said, those of us, we typically count how many minutes there are till session's over. And I think that's kind of the perspective that you all may, if you don't have that, you probably should have it if you're in business, is how fast can we get through this session and how painless can we make it? Mr. T once made a prediction in a movie about the prediction was pain. And I'm concerned from the business side of it that we do have a lot of things to watch out for. Obviously, we have a governor who's very, very pro-job creation, pro-business. You have a Carroll County delegation that is very much of the perspective that we need to make Maryland a friendlier place to create jobs, to raise a family, to retire. And we now, unfortunately, though, and Delegate Krebs alluded to it with discussing some of the primaries that happened, we lost a few seats in the House. We actually netted one seat in the Senate, but we're not exactly taking a victory lap on that because we wanted to net much more than that. And what's happened is in the Democratic-held seats, we've seen a further shift. It seems to happen every cycle. It gets worse and worse, where in the more safe Democratic state delegate and state Senate seats, we have a situation where we're losing a lot of the more moderate Democrats, and I wouldn't have even, some of them wouldn't have even called them that moderate, but they at least sort of semi-reasonable on business issues, job creation issues. And now we have folks ready to come into the session to make a name for themselves for how progressive they can be. So we're sort of girding our loins, getting ready for that, because we think that issues like predictive scheduling, which some of you may know what that is, some of you may not, where you could be penalized as a business if you schedule an employee and then decide to change the schedule without giving adequate notice, which would wreak havoc on most every industry, but particularly restaurant, hospitality industry, that kind of thing. And so that was something that is literally a crazy idea, that a business can't be able to manage its schedule appropriately without paying the employee for being shifted off of a shift. So that's an example, but there's many, many more, and time would not allow that are going to be proposed. if you loved the individual mandate, if you loved Obamacare, the way it got rolled out, now that there's a court ruling that has struck down the individual mandate, well, don't worry, because the Maryland General Assembly is going to be on the case wanting to propose Maryland do its own individual mandate, which seems like a bad idea to me. I don't know about you, to try to manage health care in that way at the state level, but that's another one that's going to affect everybody, but could particularly be impactful in the business community. So we're concerned about those things. We have to decide, I think a lot of us do, you can't just hunker down, though. We've got to play offense. And so trying to look at different proposals that we can put out there on tax policy, on regulatory issues, to sort of keep the momentum going. That right now at the executive level, the governor is fortunately able to do a lot of things within the Commerce Department and other agencies to help the business community, to help with making the state more business friendly and job growth more prominent. But for the 3 months we're in session, there's an opportunity for sort of the other side to come out and try to ram through things that we know would not be positive for the people in this room. And really, it's really all about doing what's right for everybody. Because if we can't create jobs, and if we can't keep people employed in particularly jobs that are the most susceptible to being lost if the cost for that job rises, then we're really hurting the very people that my friends that are more on the left, that may be well-intentioned, are trying to help, but you end up hurting those people. So we have to have that balance. And Maryland, for too long, has been too far to the left on those issues. We've started to see it come back a little bit, and we are worried, though, that with this new influx of personalities and people, that it's going to be a tough session. So with that, I know there's a number of other issues that we could talk about that are going to be prominent. Particularly, I sit on the Judicial Proceedings Committee in the Senate. The crime in Baltimore and the issues that sort of are surrounding all of that. It's not just Baltimore City now; it's coming out into other areas. It's not just crime, though. It's the issues that lead to crime, and the whether it's the drug trade, illegal guns, which I think are a huge problem, but don't tend to get the kind of attention that maybe they should, because people, again, for political agenda, are more focused on making it harder for people who haven't broken a law to buy a gun, as opposed to trying to really punish people who use guns in the wrong way or use illegal guns. So in my committee, we're going to have a number of those issues that we're tackling, which if we're not safe, we can't have a strong economy either. And Baltimore, people often ask me in Carroll County, they hear about Baltimore, it's like, well, I just wish we could just ignore it and leave it and not do anything about it. And it's like, well, I'm sympathetic, but at the same time, it's a huge economic driver for our state. Many of my constituents, our constituents, drive into the city to work, and so we've got to try to figure out what we can do to be supportive, but be supportive in the sense of we can't just be throwing money at problems. We really need to be serious about putting people in jail that have committed serious crimes, and what can we do to try to be sure that we triage that and get it going back in the right direction. So that'll be something that we spend a lot of time on in my committee in judicial proceedings. So with that, I could keep going, but I know we're supposed to keep it to a few minutes. I'll be happy to take questions later, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
We should keep moving up chairs.
That's right. Good morning, everybody. And thank you for, this is a phenomenal crowd. It really is. And it's a delight to see. I'm Trent Kittleman. I live in Howard County, but I represent the western part of Howard County and the Sykesville area of Carroll County. For me, that is a substantial part of my district, maybe 30%. Thank goodness. I always have to say when I come here how much I love Carroll County. It's the only place I can come up and say, yay, Trump, and not get booed out of the room. And you all have been very kind to me. My only regret is that when the governor does the redistricting, I have a strong feeling that I won't have you as my constituents anymore, which will make me sad, but it's whatever's right for Carroll County. The governor should and will do. I served on the Judiciary Committee my first session and had much of what Senator Reedy just said was absolutely true. Baltimore City was just the more I learned about it, the more unhappy I got. I started watching the Kerwin Commission hearings back, what was it, 20 months ago or more, simply because I knew this was going to be an issue. The Baltimore County schools are absolutely, I can't think of a word to use. All I know is that they get more money than anybody, and they don't do anything for the students. And I got so upset. I mean, that's 40 years of children that we have wasted in Baltimore City, and yet the Baltimore City delegation won't seem to do anything to fix it. So apparently I got so upset about it, I asked to move to a different committee, not because I didn't like judiciary, but because, in a way, I didn't deal with issues that are paramount to the constituents that I have. So I will now serve on the Appropriations Committee. I chose that one because I think, obviously, money is the driving factor in virtually every piece of legislation that, well, that's not true. Most of the legislation that we pass. And understanding how that comes and goes can be a dramatic help in arguing or talking about any other issue that comes up on the floor. That's right. That jogged my memory. I wanted to say something briefly about Howard County. We had a very bad outcome in Howard County. I was very fortunate. My cohort, Warren Miller, did get reelected, not by what people should be getting reelected, not by as many votes as he should have had or some others should have had. We lost two of my a relative and two of my very, very good friends in the legislature, Bob Flanagan, who represented 9B and who I sat beside and who I was the deputy secretary with in transportation. So he won't be back, which is very sad. And the worst part is Senator Bates, Gail Bates, whom I'm sure most of you know, who's just a wonderful, wonderful representative. She was in the House and served in appropriations, and she was doing a great job in the Senate. Moreover, she and I campaigned together most of the time from maybe July on, and she always gave me a ride up here to Westminster or to Newmarket, and that's why I was late, because she wasn't there to drive and navigate. So I personally will miss them very much, and I know that the legislature will be the less for their not being there. The only other thing that I wanted to ask you about, or to mention to you all, my father was an entrepreneur. I have a natural inclination to understand and to support businesses. I understand, and so do my colleagues. We understand small businesses. Most of the people in the legislature, I think, must get their opinions about business from the television. And they see these big companies, the Enrons, and they think everybody up there is corrupt. And so when they put a bill together like that stupid sick and safe leave bill, they don't try at all to accommodate the things that are important or vital, critical even, to small businesses. I will tell this story because I tell it every time I'm in a business meeting. You may have heard me say it before, but one of my cohorts, who was a very good friend, after the vote was done on sick and safe leave, I, of course, voted against it, and I had argued against it. She came up to me and said, Trent, I just have to ask, how could you vote against giving people leave on that bill? And I said, well, I really worry about the way it was structured. The small businesses are really good. And her response to me was, and I quote, well, if they don't like running a business, why don't they just go get a job? And that is the kind of mindset that people, my Democratic colleagues, often have toward business. They do not understand what it takes to run a small business. And that bill that, I'm not sure which one of my colleagues mentioned it, but the scheduling bill, I took a look at that a number of years ago. I said, this is the worst bill I have ever seen in the legislature. And that is saying a lot. So our job down there is to work hard to primarily resist. We don't put in a lot of bills. I think 4,000 that were originally initiated. I think that's enough. I spoke to a group of fifth graders, and I asked them a question: how many bills do you think get introduced or passed in the legislature? 3. I said, would that it were so. But anyway, we're going to have a tough year, but it's delightful that we do have a governor on our side, or it wouldn't be any fun at all. And we'll work hard. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Now I would like to open it up to questions from anyone who has any questions either on the comments that our delegation made or about any other business-related legislation that might be coming up. Questions along that line. And Mr. Frazier,
We didn't lose our representation on the judiciary committee for delegation.
would you like a microphone?
Mine's pretty loud.
No.
Delegate Pippy and Delegate Cox are both members of the Judiciary Committee. Can you tell us the rest of your committee assignments? Because they have changed, I think, because I don't think the people here know exactly what committees you serve on.
Thank you. Is this on? My committee has not changed. I am on the Health and Government Operations Committee. I've been on it for 10 years, and it's one thing I didn't talk about, but it's really important. So we do everything with healthcare, hospitals, assisted livings, occupational health, anything with procurement, anything with estates and trusts, anything to do with the death industry, funerals, funeral homes, cemeteries. So I'm on the same committee I've been on for the last 10 years. Thank you.
And Delegate Shoemaker and Delegate Rose are both on Ways and Means, which will be very important as we talk about educate. That's big education committee. It's interesting for the senators, Senator Huff, who has a couple of precincts, he has the Mount Airy area, and the new Senator Hester, who's taking over for Senator Bates. We're all going to be on the Judicial Proceedings Committee together, so that's going to be interesting. And so we'll see how that all shakes out.
Oh, appropriations.
Okay, anyone else? Yes. There you go. You got that.
Hi, I'm interested in small business, and we're starting to start something in Town, and it's just been an awful process. And I guess what I want to talk about is that, unless the whole state just really wants Walmarts and Rite Aids and Wawas, well, that's great, because you know what they have? They have big money. They also have a ton of lawyers, and that's great. But the whole permitting process, I know you're talking about, on other levels, but just for the small person who's never really had their own business, who wants to develop a project, the whole process is a nightmare. And I'm wondering, is any of that going to be addressed? Because also to move along something like a liquor license, like just the permitting process, you have to understand there's a lot of things that weren't done legally, so the county wasn't doing their job inspecting these properties and stuff, and now you go in, you try to do it, they're going to hold you responsible for the old stuff. It's more and more and more money, and all we really want to do is bring jobs, open up, but we need assistance. And, to get that assistance, here, let me give you more paperwork. We don't have those lawyers to interpret all that, right? Do you understand? That's really difficult. So I just want to know where we're at on small business, and is there somebody who's really in charge that can say, hey, let me help you. Let us get somebody to walk you through this process, as opposed to everybody just saying, yeah. And like you say, sometimes here's an application to get some help, but, to interpret all that, too, is really important for the small business person. Thank you.
Let me address that, because I forgot to make the most important point that I wanted to make today, and that is to ask you all, I know you do a great job with writing letters and opposing bad legislation, but it is so critical, because the people on the other side apparently don't really work that hard, and they have lots of people who can go down and lobby. And if you all businesses can either make your information available to me, I would like to try to train some of the new delegates who are young and don't understand it, just to bring them in to a business and have them know those things that you do, and see firsthand what the problems are when they pass these ridiculous and also duplicative regulations. Governor Hogan has taken a real leadership in trying to streamline regulations. Of course, that's on the state level, and the big problem is you have state level, you have the county level, and fortunately, we have no towns in Howard, but you all have towns, and towns put more regulations, and a lot of times they conflict. I thoroughly believe that there are a number of businesses in this state that just do business, that maybe certainly they don't know about regulations, and some of them that may just say, hey, if I had to do that, I couldn't do business, so they just go ahead. That is the wrong way to do it. It needs to be done the way you said. There should be an ombudsman or somebody who can give you some help going through. I think probably that would be at the county level for the kinds of things you're talking about, but often the health department, are so intermingled with county and state that it's almost impossible to figure out what you need to do. So we don't have any ready answers, but we certainly would like your help. And one last thing is, this is what the legislators answer to. They answer to their constituents. The reason that we are not a sanctuary state is that the people in Mike Miller's district rose up and they called him and they wrote him to the point where he stopped supporting it. And you can't do that on every issue, but be aware if you have people that you know in other counties, you don't need to worry about your delegation, but other chambers and even the Maryland Chamber, which could do a whole lot more, that would really, really help us try to do something about these regulations.
And I'm just to the specific question, maybe we can get your information afterwards. We actually have somebody here from the State Commerce Department, but I don't know if it's permitting issues. It may be a town or maybe a county issue, but we have people here from the county. Maybe we could talk afterwards about the specific situation. It is true that there is and everybody here probably that's run a small business knows there's this framework of different requirements, and some of them are very important, so it's not that they're not important necessarily. Sometimes I think you could do without some of it, but it does sometimes take a while to get answers from certain agencies. So when it's a state agency, we try to streamline and get to the bottom of why you're not getting an answer. If it's county, it may be a different set of questions, but maybe we can talk offline. You are right that is a never-ending battle to try to the quicker we can get answers, the better off we're going to be for being able to get open and create jobs, for sure.
And I would like to add, we have the community college has a program to help entrepreneurs get through some of those things. And I don't know, who's here from the community college? Usually they are. Steve's over there. Talk to Steve. Also, your town, you have Nancy McCormick here that can help. And our economic development group in Carroll County should be here. John Wheatman, John's in the back. So there are a lot of resources. And what I suggest, too, if you hit an obstacle that doesn't make sense, your county commissioners and us need to know it so we can fix it for the next guy. What happens many times, small business hits an obstacle, they get through it, it's a pain in the neck, and we never fix it for the next guy. So, if you pass that stuff on, one thing I don't like is the finger pointing. Sometimes the county says, oh, the state makes us do this. Well, then tell us what it is and let's fix it. So I ask all of you, when you hit these obstacles, let us know. The governor is really big on getting rid of some of these regulations that don't make sense. Many of them you do, but if they don't, let's fix it for everybody. So you got a lot of resources in this room. There's Nancy, there's John, there's Steve with the community college, and the commissioners aren't here, but economic development, Denise is here, Beaver somewhere, in the back, and they hopefully can help you. And if there's an obstacle and make a phone call to us if it's a state issue, and we'll help get through it.
Yeah, I understand that. And you know what? All those people you mentioned are fantastic. Okay? They've been really wonderful. But I think you're missing the point here a little bit, is that it takes a lot of money, even though some of this is free or some of these are, 50% off fundings and all that. But it takes a lot of money to go through this process. That's what I'm trying to say. Is there any kind of legislation to look at businesses that are startups that really don't have a big corporate backing to help us, right? As opposed to like a Walmart who has all those lawyers that, I can't afford to pay all those people, right? To sort through all that. You just even said, it's a confusing process. You got the state, you got the county. I understand all that. but there's a money problem for the small business, right? Because most of them will walk away at some point because they can't deal with it all. And that's all I'm saying, okay?
Sure.
Does that make sense? But you're absolutely right. You know, Nancy, John Wheatman, and a lot of people. I was in the Carroll County Biz Challenge. I'm pro all that, right? But bottom line, it comes down to sometimes helping us with money, okay?
Sure.
So that's all.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I'll present one. You mentioned, did we have another one? Oh, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the one statement that the biggest thing out there is the redistricting. Until we dispose of the gerrymandering and the concept of safe seats, the polarization of the legislature and the willingness to give other people's money away, we just will never stop. So, you know, and I know that people here in this room understand it, but it's educating that great mass of people who are on the receiving end of all of our tax funds. I know we have an issue coming up in Tawnytown regarding taxpayer assisted housing. That's going to be coming up soon, you know, where our tax money is going to be used to essentially reduce our property values. That, you know, until we can get away from those kinds of issues where so many people are trying to give our money away and get back to a more balanced society, it's not going to change. And
Well, let me
like I
just
say,
make-
hunker down.
No, I understand, but let's make a point. The more people that get this money vote that way. So the more that people don't pay anything, I look at even the tax cuts at the federal level. So many less people pay money anymore. If you don't pay anything, why do you care what tax rates are? So everybody needs a little skin in the game, and I find that it's going to be only getting worse. It's going the other way. Because many of these people, they go out and run on this. So we raise taxes because their constituents don't pay them. So keep in mind, it's not like they're quiet about it. They go out and say, look what we did. And they you know, everything that we voted against, if you read their campaign literature in some of these districts, that's what they were for. So it's just the people that they represent, and more people want something out of the system.
I agree. Redistricting, though, is more important than people might think. It might sound like a political thing, but it's probably the biggest public policy opportunity, one way or the other, in the next. That's why re-electing the governor was so important, because drawing fair lines that makes sense so people, and on the congressional level, it's way worse even than the state legislative level, but the state legislative level has issues too. People don't know who the representatives are. It's polarized, you're right. Many times if you draw a whole bunch of really safe districts, there's no incentive to compromise. There's no incentive to get anything done. And I think we sort of see that in Washington right now, is there's kind of like, you know, people are more worried about being challenged from one end or the other than they are, you know, so it's a real challenge. So I agree with you that is a major public policy thing that we're going to be dealing with in the next couple of years.
And keep in mind, 10 years ago, when we had the last redistricting, a bunch of us got together, and actually Senator Hoff led the charge, and we took it to court.
Yeah,
but we didn't have
tried.
the governor behind us at that time, and we had to raise the money to take it to court. And one of the things we took to court is called single-member districts. There's only 3 states in the country that have these multi-member districts like we do in Maryland. Some people have 3 legislators, some delegates, some have 2, some have 1. Well, that's unfair. Some people have 3 people to vote for, some have 2, some have 1. The rest of the country have single-member districts. You represent a small area, so you are accountable to the people, just like Congress. So, 47 other states do it that way. The last 2 states that are like that are moving away from it, and Maryland is still huckered because in a big district with 3 people, they can control it with money. The power of people spend a lot of money, and they keep those people in place forever. So you'll hear more about it, but having Governor Hogan put forth the next redistricting is going to be, it's major. It's a big deal.
For all 3 of you, what is going on with the retirement pension taxation? I know we have a lot of people in Maryland that are moving to Pennsylvania and other states because of the taxation. Is there any, I know the governor has tried to put it on the table, and it hasn't gone anyplace.
Well, it's one of the governor's top priorities this year. It's been a priority for me just to level it out for many years. It's a huge problem for us on the border. So he talked I guess, a month ago about it being one of his top priorities, so we'll see if it's part of his legislative package. But we've been pushing for it for years just to start phasing it out and at least make it the same, have everyone get the same amount. Right now, you can deduct up to $30,000 from a pension, but not everyone can take that deduction. And slowly this year, we added state correctional officers, veterans, and law enforcement to it to give them an extra $15,000, so they get $45,000 free. I say free, no tax. But we got to do it for everyone, and I think it is a priority of the governor, and certainly is a priority for us.
You're talking specifically about having to move from the retirement plan of the state to the retirement to the feds,
Retiree taxes.
not pension. Okay. The other was an issue.
Okay, I think I'll follow up with the last question, unless we have others before I turn it over to Mike. Excuse me, you had mentioned the predictive scheduling, and some version of that bill has been presented, I think, every year for the past probably 4 or 5, along with continuing efforts to raise the minimum wage statewide to at least 15. Can you give us a feel of how much of a push either of those are going to get this year, or is it going to be pretty much the same old effort?
Well, I'm concerned that the so-called fight for 15 is going to be a major, litmus test issue for the Democratic caucus in our General Assembly, because a lot of people ran on that in the primary. Frankly, Ben Jealous became the Democratic nominee because he was willing to promise like $15 minimum wage, and we'll pay all teachers $60,000 a year, and we'll do. And they're like, hey, great, the unions all endorsed him. It doesn't really matter if it makes sense or not. And had he been elected governor, I'm not sure they would have necessarily been able to do all of that. But I do think they'll push for 15. And whenever I hear $15 minimum wage, I always say, well, why not 20? I mean, if we're just going to pick numbers out of the air, I mean, it's one of those things where the minimum wage is now up to $10.20 or 10.10. So minimum wage jobs were never supposed to be. It was a training wage. It was a training wage, and now we're getting to the point where, when I was 14, 15, I was washing dishes in a restaurant and working in a car wash. A lot of those jobs for young people are going away. And certainly that was less of a problem for me, but for someone who's trying to make ends meet and actually have a job, maybe a second job or a third job, those jobs are going away. And so I think the $15 minimum wage will be a huge push. I don't know whether they'll get it done or not. But they took out in the Senate. For a long time, there was the chairman of the Finance Committee was a guy named Mac Middleton from Carroll County. He's a Democrat. I thought pretty progressive by the time he was done, but he lost a primary, and that was one of the big issues the unions pushed to take him out, was that he would hold back $15 minimum wage. And the reason they wanted it is because then it raises the wage scale for everybody. Right. You know, and it's the same thing with the teacher salary. You know, my wife's a teacher. I'd love for her to make more money. But at the same time, it's like you have to look at, number one, some parts of the state, $60,000 is more like $90,000. In other parts of the state, $60,000 might be more like $40,000. It just depends. You can't set, same thing with minimum wage. That's where the market should really set wages. Maybe having a floor is one thing, but having the market set wages is much better way of doing things, because different parts of the state have different needs and different costs of living. So I say all that to say I think that'll be the big hot button push. What I worry about, and we've seen this before, is that they won't get that, but then they'll do, well, we'll throw the predictive scheduling in, because then that'll satisfy some of the activists because we couldn't do the $15 minimum wage. So I'm concerned about both of those. As well as I said, the healthcare thing, I'm concerned about that as well. So
it's bad to sound so negative, but unfortunately, that's the makeup of our legislature. And one thing that I don't know if everybody here completely understands is that what we're talking about makes so much sense, and it is so reasonable, and you can back it up with facts and studies and whatnot. Why are these people so dense? It's because we've gotten to a point where nobody agrees on facts. If you say X, then they say Y. It is virtually impossible to, particularly in our when we talk on the floor, or even as in testifying, to make any progress with people who are thinking either politically or with their hearts only, which I would say most of them are. They think that's a nice thing to do. To get a rational argument across that will change anybody's mind is, I won't say impossible, but it's a very, very hard struggle, and we lost so many of the senators who had that common sense Democrats, that the Senate was normally the place that stopped most of those things. So, Justin, you have to make sure that you pick up the slack there, and
We'll try.
Well, thank you, and I'm going to turn it back to Mike.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming. I want to give a bunch of thank yous. Dana, nice job. First year running. You know, I wish Mr. Gavin were here. He's a little under the weather, but boy, he did a great job for us for a long time. And this is probably, I've said this every year, my least favorite part of the job, the legislative stuff, but it's great to have people who live and breathe this. So for all of you on the legislative committee, thank you. Steve, you're a rock. Thank you. Steve and Mike, all you guys. Round of applause for these guys, okay? Our delegation, thank you so much for coming. We're going to be all rooting you on for the good fight. Good luck. Better you than me, so thank you. Peggy Soper, wherever she is, you do a great job setting up these meetings. Give her a round of applause. She doesn't get enough of it. Suzette Kovalt, our chair of the board. Keep the applause going for her. Nice job, nice job. We have a nice young man here named Ryan Cook. Ryan, stand up in the back. Ryan is a classic example of why you should get interns. Several years ago, he came in, he interned, he helped us with all these letters, and now this is the second year, I think, or third. This is the third year where I'm paying him to do this from college, so he's making some money on the side. Nice job, intern. There's a lady in the back that can help you with interns. Raise your hand, raise your hand. That's the lady for you. Okay. The Springdale Prep School, nice job. Johnny Graham, is he here in the room right now somewhere? I don't know if he is, but nice job. You guys, thank you. We'll be here again next year. I believe we're doing this Friday, January 3rd, because the 2nd would be the first day back after New Year's. So put on your calendar. You all have smartphones. Put it down there now. You should all be here. Okay, a couple of upcoming events that you should know about the Chamber. We're not just business mixers and things like this. We do a lot of phenomenal community events that a lot of folks have no clue is us. Because sometimes a story will get written and won't even mention us because folks just think it's somebody else. So here's just kind of like a fast thing of what you can expect this year. Some of the outstanding community events that your membership money pays for. So if you ever wonder, well, I haven't gone to enough events, should I stay a member? You should stay a member because we're not part of the government. We're not part of some larger group. We are an independent, nonprofit chamber who exists because of you. So as a result, we can do things like next week's State of the County, where 5 commissioners come and talk, and that's a free event on Tuesday. We're also doing a great event that's free. January 8th, it's our 95th anniversary kickoff event. It's from 5 to 7, I think, at Cone Creative on Main Street. There's still room for you. Beer is going to be from Brewery Fire, who won the Biz Challenge. Wine's going to be from Old Westminster Winery. Food's going to be from the Food Chick. Music's going to be from Walt Michael, and it's free. So if you don't sign up for that one, you probably shouldn't be in business because maybe you're not so smart. I don't know. March, we do Outstanding Teacher Awards. We've been doing that for years. April, I think, is the month where we do our Drug and Violence Awareness Expo. 2,500 kids from the schools come. That's amazing. That's because the Chamber has organized that with all of the people who get involved with us. May, we do our annual public safety event. August is the Carroll Biz Challenge. So many events like that we do for the community. Please tell people about us and about you so that they can come on board and join. February 19th, we're taking applications for the Carroll Biz Challenge. And we're accepting applications right now for our Leadership Carroll class of 2020. And we're going to Greece in October. You should come along. We'll have a lot of good drinks and fun. We like to have some fun. I don't think I've missed any announcements, and I think I've gone over by a couple minutes. Any major announcements, Peggy, that I missed? All right, we're good. Thank you all so much for coming. You can stay and mingle. Get some cell phone numbers from these folks up here because you probably have some questions that maybe you wanted to ask and you didn't have a chance. Thank you, everybody, for coming, okay?